So you've got black mould in your home and you want to know how to get rid of it and how to stop it coming back. Well, this is something I can speak from experience of because we have been battling black mould in our home for over 10 years. Thankfully, we're almost on top of it, but I will say up front that it's not something where there's a just simple measure that will solve it and make it go away forever. It's also something where what works for one person in one home might not necessarily work for someone else in another home. So you need to understand the kind of nature of the problem and the options available to you to stop it from appearing. And then you can understand the best plan of attack for your circumstances. So what is mould? Where does it come from? Why is it growing in your home? Well, very simply, the air around you holds moisture and this moisture will condensate on cold spots in your home. So when you get to winter, you start to see that moisture appear on your windows, for example. That's the condensation. That's this moisture in the air that's travelled there and it's settled there. The same thing happens on your walls. You can't necessarily see it, but the cold spots in your house will attract that water. It'll sit there and that creates the perfect environment for mould to grow. That makes it sound like a very simple problem, right? But it's actually not, because there's lots of different things to take into account. The temperature, the humidity levels outside, all of these things affect it. But I think in order to feel like we can get on top of this problem, we have to kind of just take some simple messages away. And that's that in order to tackle this problem of mould, we need to reduce the amount of moisture that's in our air and we need to reduce the amount of cold surfaces that we've got. And if we can tackle those two things, we've got a chance of stopping the mould growing. So before we talk about mould prevention, a quick word on getting rid of mould, because you may be obviously wanting to tackle the mould that you've got already. Now, one thing that I must say is that if you've got expansive, really intense kind of patches of mould, and you think there might be another thing contributing to it, so you might have rising damp, you might have a leaky pipe, you might have some kind of constant source of moisture. Even if you see it in the top corners, it could be a problem with your guttering. If that's an option, you might need to get in a professional to have a look at that, because you're not going to get rid of it if that moisture just keeps, coming. So that's something to bear in mind. If you've got more patchy mould here and there around your property, you can have a go at cleaning that yourself. Put your PPE on, protect yourself against it, mask, goggles, all the rest of it before you start. Few options you've got available. Some people swear by bleach. The problem with bleach is it doesn't necessarily penetrate the mould that's got deep into the surface, so not always going to be totally effective. Another really sort of a safe option is to use vinegar. Now, don't use that with bleach, of course, but you can use a vinegar solution and that's supposed to penetrate more and get rid of that more effectively. Another option is to get a shop-bought mould solution specifically for cleaning mould, and I've heard good things about these. In particular, HG Products one seems to come quite highly recommended. I know that we've used all of these options in the past to tackle our mould and got rid of it. Once you've done that though, and it's all dried out nicely, the thing that I would definitely recommend is using some mould prevention paint. So these paints actually raise the temperature of your walls incredibly, and that stops them becoming such a hospitable environment for mould to grow. Now, first up, we need to understand where all this moisture is coming from in our homes and what we can do to control it. So of course, a big source of moisture in our homes is our kitchens, especially now lots of people are working from home all day and possibly boiling that kettle non-stop. Well, almost non-stop. But of course, cooking as well, and none of us are about to give up cooking anytime soon. So we need to think about things we can do to either reduce this moisture or certainly control it. Actually, the most simple thing to do that a lot of people don't always remember is just putting your lids on your saucepans. That's what they're there for, to stop all that moisture escaping into the air. The other thing is the extractor fan. I know a lot of people who have fairly reasonable extractor fans in their kitchen and they just forget to put them on, and you walk into their kitchen and it's thick with steam and you're trying to find them in there somewhere. So I think people who wear glasses don't make that mistake actually, because your glasses always steam up, so they're the ones that notice. But yeah, put your extractor fan on. However, a word of caution is you might need to do a little bit of detective work about your extractor fans. Just because they're there and they're making the right noises doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually adequate for your space. You need a certain power of extractor relative to the space that you're trying to extract that moisture from. And I'll put a link to how you can do that calculation down below. I've got a couple of other videos on this subject as well. So make sure that it's working properly. The other side of extraction is that you need to make sure that the ducting from your extractor fan that is taking that moisture away is actually doing that and is actually, connected to the outside and chucking it out there. Because unbelievably, quite a few homes have extractors that just chuck that moisture into the loft. So they're just moving the problem from one space to another. Might sound like it's working, but it's not actually doing that much for you. So check that out so that you can have some confidence in your extractor fan when you're putting it on. Other things to think about in your kitchen is make sure that you're closing your door when you're cooking so that the moisture, any moisture that is still there, isn't allowed to escape to other areas of your home. Perhaps the particular areas in your home where you've got those problem cold surfaces where mould tends to grow. And you can also open a window, so that's helpful as well. Oh, and another thing about extractor fans, beware, because some of them are designed just to take the odour out of the air. So they've got carbon filters in them rather than the ducting that's taking the moisture outside. And so they might be making your room smell better, but they're not actually doing much about that moisture problem. Another big source of moisture is of course washing, so showering and bathing. It's estimated that a 10-minute shower puts about 2 pints of water into the air, so that's quite a lot. So you can think about reducing the amount of time you spend in the shower and bath, and you can use less water perhaps, but you can't stop washing altogether, so this is always going to be something that you have to try and control. Now we're back to extraction again, so once again, really important to have the right extractor fan, the right power for the space that you've got, so your shower or your bathroom. And also these kind of extractor fans come with added features that you might want to look for. So for example, you could get an extractor fan that has a humidistat, so that then senses what the levels of humidity are at and turns it on automatically at certain levels. That's kind of handy. Also, generally in a bathroom and shower room, it's handy to have an extractor fan that runs longer than you actually have the light switched on. So you can finish your shower, finish your bath, walk away, and that extractor fan will continue to run for whatever extra time you set it at, perhaps 20 minutes or half an hour. The other thing, of course, is opening your windows once again. Look, make sure that you've got trickle vents in your windows. If you haven't, they are now actually standard in windows, but if you haven't got them, then you want to open your window. You may want to do that as well anyway, just a little bit, just after your shower or during your shower, but just to give a chance for that moisture to escape. Actually, just wiping down your shower after you've used it, so your shower screen, your walls, anywhere where that moisture is lingering, get rid of it, get it squeegeed down your plug hole, out of your life. Now, another big problem when it comes to creating moisture in our homes is of course drying washing indoors. What do you do if you haven't got a tumble dryer, or quite frankly you just can't afford to run it at the moment? Then you've got to dry them indoors, right? So you're hanging them around and you're waiting for them to get nice and dry, and as they're drying, what's happening? Well, that moisture is escaping into your air and finding its way around to those cold spots and creating a lovely environment for mould to grow. So again, this is more and more moisture that you're adding to the atmosphere. So in the worst case scenario, you're going to be cooking in your kitchen without lids on your pots, with your doors open, with your windows shut, with your extractor fan off. That's after you've just had a shower with the windows shut and no extractor fan on, and you haven't squeegeed down your drawers or anything afterwards. And then you're going to go and sort out your washing, which has been drying indoors and creating lots more. And you get the picture of how much moisture you can end up with in your home with nowhere for it to go. So there's some common sources of moisture in our homes. And let's not forget that we as humans actually emit quite a lot of moisture every day. It's about 2 litres per person. Let's chuck our pets in there as well for good measure. And actually, you know, as long as we're living and breathing, we're going to be adding to the problem. So there's no way we're ever going to get to a situation where there's no moisture in our homes, but we can certainly significantly reduce it and control the problem. What else can we do about getting rid of that moisture that is floating around? How else can we control it? Well, one thing that comes highly recommended, particularly where people are drying washing indoors, is a dehumidifier. And the good thing about these is that you can use them at the source of the problem. So if you're drying your washing in a room, you can have your dehumidifier running there as well, dealing with the problem fairly directly. Also perhaps running it after you've had a shower or after you've had a bath. You can put it on at the right times. The other good news about these is they're really inexpensive to run. Martin Lewis did some research on this recently to kind of reassure people that it's okay to turn these on, and the cost of running them is really low. I know someone who lives in a flat who dried her washing in a flat who had a mould problem, and she said since she's had a dehumidifier, it was one that was about £150, she said it's completely solved that problem for her. Now the good thing about being in a flat, of course, is that she can keep that space quite warm. If you're running these in a bigger property, it might not completely solve your problem in quite the same way. So everyone's going to have different experiences of these solutions, as we discussed before at the beginning of this video. Another thing that's a lot cheaper that can also be very effective and we've used over the years are these moisture captures. So you get, this is the unit that you use constantly and you refill it, and then you get these crystals that you put inside, and these basically just absorb the moisture. So over a course of weeks and months, depending how much moisture you've got around, this will fill up with water and you'll change it, get rid of what's in there, and then put some fresh crystals in. So they're quite effective and they're cheap as well. The other thing I really like about these is you can also place these where you've got a problem. So if there's a corner of the room where it's an issue, you can just add this in there and know that it's kind of dealing with it fairly locally. So that's really helpful. The other thing to think about is how you're going to adjust what you do, your lifestyle and your measures that you're going to take according to your property. So that's the reason I'm stood in here now. This is our north-facing room. We've got a couple of north-facing rooms where the moisture and the damp is a problem because these never really heat up. So the walls are really, really cold, and then that's, of course, where the moisture travels to. So what can we do about this? Well, we can heat the rooms. I mean, that does make a difference for us. And we found initially this year, we decided not to bother heating these rooms because we don't spend that much time in them, just sleep in them, weren't really that bothered about having the heating on at night. But we've actually had to heat them anyway, even when no one's in there, just to get some heat moving and to help solve that problem and warm up those surfaces. The other solution is actually very simple, and that's every single morning after we've been sleeping in the rooms and our bodies have been, giving off moisture in the night, we just open the windows, and that allows some of that moisture to escape. So whether or not it's half an hour, a couple of hours, get rid of that moisture. We can wipe the windows down as well, and that really helps too. So there we go, they are my tips on mould prevention. I really hope that you find them useful. If you do, please let me know in the comments down below, or maybe you've got your own tips to add. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone else who you think might find it helpful too. And also, if you're new here, I would love it if you considered subscribing and hitting that bell notification button. I post regular content on home hacks and home renovation and home information videos, so I'd love to see you again very soon. But that is all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.